Do you know what I like to do on Sunday mornings? I like to look at some baseball cards. This is going to be an extravaganza. I am going to walk you through the history of baseball cards from the beginning to every era. And this video was inspired by Chris from Missouri. So make sure you stick around till the end. All right, we'll start with the oldest card in my collection, which is from 1878. And this was a generic card featuring different sports. And this is the baseball one. And this was issued by a French biscuit company. Now, cards were issued in all kind of different products. Starting, of course, in the 1800s. In fact, the first baseball card is really what's considered to be the first baseball card. It's really a team photo that was distributed in Cincinnati, I believe. And it was a furniture company. Now, most of the cards that we're familiar with, like the Allen and Ginter, were distributed in tobacco or cigarettes. As you can see, they had different sizes. And then we get to the Old Judge cigarettes. And you have this more obscure set here. And then you get to the Mayo cut plug. I like these because the backs are completely black. Very unique. And you had, I believe this is the very first game cards of baseball players, specific baseball players. There was an earlier game that was just generic baseball. But this is the first one to list actual players. So this is a gold coin. King Kelly. Chewing tobacco. And then we get to the turn of the century. This is a 1903 Bresh and Williams. And that was a confectionery company. Went out of business during the Great Depression. A very rare set. In 1906, they issued these Fan Craze playing cards. Although, I don't know how the game actually worked. Then it brings us to the T206s in 1909. And the T205s. And the Colgan's Chips. And the Tip Top Bread. And the T207s. These were issued with little cigars. And you had these beautiful cards. Another bread issue, Bruner's Butter Crust. This is an uncatalogued Walter Johnson. I believe these were cut off of notebooks. Early cutout card. Here's a Juju Drums. '1910 orange border. These were cut off of candy boxes. Got the Ramley cards. Turkish tobacco. We have the fabulous E cards. These were issued in different candies. Caramels, usually. You got the Sporting Life cards. They were issued with a newspaper. You have the W555. These were cut off of candy boxes. You had Fatima team cards, Fatima individual cards. You had the Mecca 2-player cards. You had the rare 1906 Lincoln publications. Then that takes us to the teens. We have, of course, the Cracker Jacks. There were various card games, like this one, and this one. And this one, the Tom Barker game. And the Nap Lajaway game. And a Collins McCarthy here. Here's a 1912 triple folders. Pacific Coast Biscuit Company. Fabulous sepia postcard. Fleischmann's Bakery. Here's a 1912 Imperial Tobacco. That's Iron Man McGinnity. These are out of Canada, and they are a minor league set. Boston's Boy Store. Boston store for boys. The Sporting News. Another publication issue. Buck Weaver there. So you have various cards like that in the teens. Then that takes us to the 20s. Now the 20s were full of strip cards like this one. And they had some amazing sets. Here's the Oxford Confectionery, Walter Johnson. And you had the American Caramel cards. And various other similar cards. You had these cutout cards, W575-1. These were very common types of cards. This is W575-2. However, no affiliation can be shown between these two sets. They just happen to look similar. These were not cutout cards, and they're also known as the shoulder signature series because the signatures are across the shoulder. In 1926, you have the Spalding Champion set. And you can turn these in for a coupon to buy sporting goods. Here's the coupon. You had a 1921 die cut set. You had Z-Nut cards from the Pacific Coast League. You had all kind of different cutouts, like this one here. All kind of different cutout sets in this era. Of course, you have the ice cream cards. A lot of the beer companies moved to ice cream during Prohibition. And you have this rare set, the W502. These were game cards. It says one bagger on the back. Pretty rare set. Similar to the ice cream cards of the era. 1923 Willard Chocolate. Here's a 1921 Coatzer's Bread card. Here we have an American Caramel. And they made a similar strip card. It was a blank back. Here's a W501. Here's a 1923 Maple Crispet. These were out of Canada. Here's a William Patterson. Very rare set. These are also out of Canada. 1925. That's George Sisler there. In 1929. That's Babe Ruth there. You have the 1923 Walter Mayles game. Very rare cards. This is a Universal Toy Novelty. These came in a sheet, and you cut them out. There's a Zach Wheat. Another cutout card with a nice ornate border around it. Very rare set. Here's a Leader Novelty card. Another rare set. This is a 1923 W572 cutout set. Pretty scarce. York Caramel, or Caramel, wherever you're from. This is a 1928 let's see, 560. These were little game cards. Jimmy Fox there. You had cutout cards like these. Is W565. Lou Gehrig. This was a multi-subject set. 4 baseball players are in it. I've shown those. Here's a 1929 Cashin publication. These came in a box with an open front. You had the early exhibit cards. Then we move into the 1930s, and that's when it gets fun. Here's a Shutter and Johnson generic baseball card. Same deal here. That's Carl Hubble. 1930, Kellogg's made their first cards. There was only one baseball player in it, Christy Mathewson. You had the U.S. Caramel. You had the George C. Miller. That was a lithograph company. You had the 4-in-1 exhibit cards. You had this game card of Ducky Medwick. And we get to the 33 Gowdy. 34 Gowdy. 35 Gowdy. Sport Kings. 33 Tattoo Orbit. 33 DeLong. 33 Buttercream. In the mid-30s for a few years, they made Diamond Stars. 36, they made these game cards, SNS game cards. 37 O-Pee-Chee stand-ups. Along with these, they made a few years. The Batter-Ups. 38 Gowdy. Bogger Chocolate, rare cards. Little tiny cards that came in with chocolate. You have this fantastic Babe Ruth. You had Rice Sticks. These came in a shirt. You have this 1933 Eclipse import. Cartoony kind of cutout cards. You have the 1930 W554. These were oversized cutout cards. And beautiful. You had the Gowdy stand-up card. This was a stand-up cardboard of Babe Ruth. You have the 1936 Overland Candy. And this card was the wrapper. Very rare. You have the 1934 Butterfinger. How about a Grape Nuts card? Busy Dean. You had the 1936 R312s. You had the National Chickle. You had the Wide Pen. Cards came as lids on ice cream. They even came on matchbooks. You had the Photo Fun cards that came in these packs, and they were self-developing. You had the Rayo print kits. These were self-developing too. Here's the Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And then this same company in 1948 made this Babe Ruth. So you could see cards were very diverse. Came in all kinds of shapes, sizes, distributed different ways, different kinds of cards. Another obscure set, Lefty Grove here. This was a Reds team issue. Got 36 Gowdy. '36 Worldwide Gum. Speedy DeRocher. You had 1939 Gowdy. And this is a salesman's sample of Joe DiMaggio. And then that brings us into the 1940s. Yeah, 40 play ball. 1941 play ball. You have 41 Gowdy. Had the double headers. Had these cartoony cards. Issued 2 different times in the decade. It is 1947 Propagandist Montel. He had Tip Top Bread, another bread issue. They had the Sport Thrills. These were given out if you bought 2 pieces of bubble gum. Sport Thrills. You had the Bond bread with the rounded corners. And then you had the Sports Star Subject with the square corners. These came in a box of 12 cards. Again with an opening in the front. You had the Blue Tints. Cutout cards. You had the 1949 Leaf. You had minor league cards like this Remar Baking Company. Billy Martin there in the minors. You had exhibit cards like this one. big in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the baseball greats from 48. You have 1948 Bowman. You have 1949 Bowman. And then Topps' first set ever, the Magic Photos from 1948. And I realize I skipped a few sets from the 1930s, so I want to go back. You have things like the 33 Warch Cigar. It's an oversized card. And, of course, the Sanella Margarine, which has become so popular in the last few years. And these were issued in Germany, and this was the book that you would stick these in. Then that brings us into the early 50s, where you had Burke Ross and Bowman. In 1951, you also had the Connie Mack cards and the team cards. Here's the Brooklyn Dodgers. $1950 Bowman. You have 1950 Micro. These were issued in gumball machines. They came in those little bubbles. You have a Sardines card. You have an Italian card of Ted Williams. You have a 1951 Wheaties card. Then you had Topps' first all baseball card set, the 1951 red and blue backs. Then that brings us to 1952. And that's when Topps came onto the scene in a big way. And they made this size card that would be their standard for the next few years until 1957, when they changed to this smaller size, which has become the norm in baseball cards. Now, as you can see, throughout the years, baseball cards came in all different products. They were distributed in all kind of different ways. They came in all shapes and sizes. The history of baseball cards goes back a long way. It is a rich, vibrant history filled with all kinds of different cards, different shapes, different sizes, issued by just about every kind of company you can imagine. So you're telling me that the vast majority of card sets ever made are all oddball cards, and only Topps and the similar issues of the more modern era, those are regular cards. Those are the only mainstream cards. T206s weren't mainstream. 1933 Gaudies weren't mainstream. 1938 Gaudies, they were mainstream. What other cards could they buy in 1938? 1949 Leaf, mainstream. All those cards were mainstream because they were the only cards issued at the time. Were Cracker Jacks mainstream? Now, I know everyone will continue to call cards oddballs. I get it. But they aren't oddball. The majority of cards can't be oddball by definition. By definition, the majority of card sets cannot be called oddballs. 1964 Topps stand-ups, not oddballs. They were issued in packs, just like all other cards. 1960 Leaf, not oddballs. They were issued with marbles. They're just like all the other cards ever made. 1964 Topps Giants, 1970 or 71 Topps Supers. Kellogg's cards, Hostess cards. They're just cards. They're all cards. Look to the history of cards. Cards were all made in different shapes and sizes. Some cards came out of a pack. Some came in with a product. Some you mailed in for. Some you cut out yourself. Some came in with cereal. Some with candy. Some with tobacco. You name it. Cards came in all kind of different products. I clearly demonstrated that all cards are baseball cards. Why do we need a further designation other than a baseball card? Who makes up these rules anyway? Who makes up the rules for a rookie card? Who makes up the rules for what we call cards that you think are not normal cards? Is it just because most people only collect newer cards? And anything that looks different than brand new cards is different to them? Is odd? Everything prior to 1952 is oddball? I don't think so. To me, rainbow cards would be oddballs. Shiny, refractors, mojo cards would be oddballs. What has it turned into? We have numbers on our cards. We have signatures on our cards. We have cards that have different colored borders. We have shiny, crazy looking signature cards. We have shiny refractor cards. We have ornate cards. Man, that's ornate. These are all oddball cards. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's like when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. Who's with me?